Yeah, and I gotta say, this particular topic is not one I ever thought I would be preaching about. Out of all the things I could possibly preach about, turn that on, yes, sir. All the things I could possibly preach about, dancing was not on the list. But you know what? There's a couple stories here that decided to run with it. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking that dancing was taboo in my household. But actually, growing up, my parents never forbid us from dancing. As a matter of fact, when I was in junior high, I was allowed to go to a junior high dance. I was a seventh grader. My sister, who was a year older than me, was an eighth grader, so the two of us went to the dance. And before we went, she told me one of the meanest, cruelest things she ever said to me. She said, if you go to this dance and you don't dance with any girls, you don't get any of the refreshments. So, yeah, I danced with a girl at this dance. And this was long before cell phones were invented, so there's no video of this anywhere. You don't have to worry about that. And I think that was probably the only dance I went through junior high and high school. And then I went to a Mennonite college. And this Mennonite college had basically 4 rules. No smoking, no drinking, no drugs, and no dancing. So yeah, we didn't worry about dancing there. Except for the fact that you take all these young Mennonite kids and you get them away from their parents and you put them off in a place far away where nobody knows what they're going on. There was several of them that decided they needed to go dancing. I was not one of them. But at the same time, actually the same year, 1974, Leo Sayer, anybody know Leo Sayer? Came out with a song, I Can Dance. Anybody remember that song? Probably not. That's okay, I'll tell you about it. Basically, he's traveling down the road, he's hungry, he's cold, and he sees a sign that says food and drink for everyone. So he says, hey, this is a cool deal, I'm gonna go in and check it out. And he goes in there and there's food as far as he can see. Tables after tables of food and all you could want and everything you could ever want. And he sits down to eat, and before he can even start eating, somebody grabs him and throws him out of the chair and says, before you eat, you gotta dance like Fred Astaire. And Leo says, I don't know how to dance, but you know what? I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm fed up with this, I need something to eat, so okay, I'll get out there and I'll show you that I can't dance. And he gets out there and he says, hey, you know what? I can dance. And if you really want a good laugh, go watch Leo Sayer, I Can Dance, on YouTube. He's really got some moves. And we soon decided that that particular song, Leo Sayer, I Can Dance, was the basic Mennonite college anthem. All these Mennonite kids that got there and all of a sudden they figured out they could dance. Well, most of them, not me. I never tried. Saw no sense in that. And then a few years later, we were blessed with disco music. Anybody remember disco music? Yeah, after seeing that, after watching that, after experiencing that, I realized, you know what, I'm gonna be perfectly happy the rest of my life never dancing. I don't have any need to dance. And I haven't seen any need to dance ever since then. Until today. And we come to these 2 stories about dancing. Now all I can say is this should be interesting. What am I gonna say about dancing? Well, to start with, I'm gonna tell you 2 things that I'm not gonna say. First off, I'm not gonna talk about how dancing is evil. How many of you have ever heard a sermon in a Mennonite church about the evils of dance? Yeah, you know, it's like anything else, it gets out of control. It can lead to bad things. It can get people out of control. But that's not what I'm here for today, to tell you that dancing is evil. If you want to dance, go ahead and dance, I don't care. The other thing you're not going to see or hear today is me dancing. Sorry to disappoint you. I don't dance, I don't know how to dance. I don't have any moves, I don't have any rhythm. You're not gonna see any dancing up here today. So, two stories. The first one, David is dancing. And David has a good reason to dance, because the Ark of the Covenant is now back in Jerusalem. This has been an interesting journey for the Ark of the Covenant. Somewhere between 60 and 100 years, nobody knows for sure how long it had been gone. See, way back in 1 Samuel chapter 4, the Israelites were at war with the Philistines. And they were losing. Things weren't going well, and they decided, you know what? If we would bring the Ark of the Covenant out to the battlefield, God will bless us and God will win this battle for us. Sounds like a great idea, but the trouble is they didn't ask God. They didn't get God's approval before they even went to war. They didn't consecrate themselves before they went to war. This was all just their idea that they thought this was going to help them out. And yeah, so they do this, and the next day things go even worse. They get totally wiped out. They all get killed. The Philistines capture the ark. And the Philistines are pretty excited about this because they had heard about the Ark of the Covenant. They had heard about everything the Israelites had been able to do. And now all of a sudden, the Ark of the Covenant seems to have lost its magic. They were able to destroy the Israelites. They were able to capture the Ark of the Covenant. So they pick it up and they take it back to their temple. And they put it in their temple next to their God. And they're pretty happy about this. And the next day they go in there, and their God, this statue of their God, their idol, is laying face first on the ground. Somebody came and knocked this thing over. They're like, how'd that happen? Must have been really windy last night. We don't know. So they set it back out. The next day they go in there. The idol is laying flat on the ground again. And this time its arms are broken off. It's been beaten into many pieces. And they say, this can't be good. We got to get this ark out of here. So they take it out of there, they put it somewhere else, and everything seems to be going fine, but all of a sudden they notice a lot of people are getting tumors. For 7 months, everybody in the town gets tumors and die and got all kinds of problems. And they say, you know what? We need to get rid of this Ark of the Covenant. Things were going well until we brought this thing into camp, and now that it's here, we've got all these bad things happening. So they talked to a bunch of priests and wise people and everything like that, and decided what to do with it. And they loaded it up on a cart, put a couple of cows to the cart, and sent it down the road. Nobody's driving this thing. The cows are just walking down the road. And they walk back to Israel. And they take the Ark of the Covenant back to the Israelites. And the Israelites are ecstatic about this. Hey, the Ark of the Covenant has been back. It had been 7 months. This thing had been gone. Now all of a sudden they had it back, and hey, there's great rejoicing, and everybody's happy, and everybody's thrilled. And a couple people make the mistake of looking into the Ark of the Covenant, making sure that everything's still in there. It's supposed to be in there, and God wipes out 70 people. The whole family of the people who looked into the Ark are killed. And the people say, you know, I'm not so sure we want this thing around here. Tell you what, let's call up the neighbors in the next town and see if they want it. I'm sure they'll be glad to have the Ark of the Covenant. I'm pretty sure they didn't tell them about everything that had happened when they looked into the Ark, but they just said, hey, the Ark is here, you guys want to keep it for us? We don't really have room for it. You know, right? So they send it on down the road. And the people in the next town designate one person, and they consecrate him, and they tell him, your job is to take care of the Ark of the Covenant. And he does. And God blesses that whole town, because they respected the Ark of the Covenant. They took care of it. And the Israelites rejoiced, and God blessed them, because they respected the Ark of the Covenant. So, many years later, when David becomes king, he says, hey, we need to get this ark back to Jerusalem. Because at that time, they believed that the Ark of the Covenant was where God resided. And God needed to be where the most of the people were. God needed to be where they worshiped God. They needed to bring the Ark of the Covenant back. And David knows where it is, so he says, okay, let's go up there and get this thing. So he sends a bunch of people up there, and they build a new cart, and they put the Ark of the Covenant on the cart, and they head down the road with it. And they hit a bump in the road, and the thing starts to fall off the cart. And one guy reaches up to hold on to it so it doesn't fall off the cart. And as soon as he touches the Ark of the Covenant, he dies. And David says, you know what? Maybe we don't want this thing in the Ark of the Covenant. Let's go talk to Obed-Edom and let him take care of this Ark of the Covenant. And Obed, because, what are you going to do when the king says, do this? You're pretty much going to do it. So he takes the Ark of the Covenant and he takes care of it. And God blesses him and his family greatly. And we're not told how God blessed him, but I imagine he had the best crops ever grew. He probably had the first tomatoes that anybody grew every year. Probably had the biggest tomatoes. All his daughters probably had sons. His wife probably had a lot of sons. We don't know how God blessed him, but it was obvious that God was blessing him. And eventually word gets back to David about this, how God is blessing this guy who's keeping the Ark of the Covenant. And David says, okay, let's figure out how to get this thing back to Jerusalem, back to where the religious center is, back to where we worship God, so that God can be with us and God can bless us. So he researches how to move it, and they do all of the proper steps, and they make these long poles and find people to carry these poles, and they carry it back, and they get it back there, and it's great. And finally, the Ark of the Covenant is back in the religious center of Israel. It's back where it belongs. God is back there. And needless to say, David is excited. And David starts dancing with all of his might. And I'm sure David was dancing because the Ark of the Covenant was back. I also think David was probably dancing because, hey, we don't have to move this thing anymore. It's here where it belongs. All we can do is just take care of it. We don't have to move it anymore. So David is happy. He's excited. He's rejoicing. He's dancing with all his might. Then we come to our second story. And there's a slightly different dance here in Mark chapter 6. The political ruler at that time was Herod. This is at the time of Jesus. Herod had an interesting relationship with John the Baptist. As we read in verse 20, Herod feared John. He respected him. He protected him. He knew he was a righteous and a holy man. He didn't like everything John the Baptist said. He threw him in prison at this time. But yet he still feared him. He respected him. And the basic problem was that John the Baptist had been telling Herod that his marriage was not appropriate. Basically, what Herod did was he divorced his wife and married his brother's wife. As the world turns, right? It was going on back then, it's still going on now. And John the Baptist went to Herod and said, you're not supposed to do those kind of things. That's not appropriate. And that's why Herod threw John the Baptist in prison. Herod's wife, Herodias, the second wife, wasn't nearly as pleased or didn't respect John the Baptist nearly as much as what Herod did. Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. John the Baptist was going around saying, you two shouldn't have done what you did. God is not happy with you, and Herodias is pretty upset by it. So eventually we get to our story today, and guess what? It's party time. It's Herod's birthday. And Herod throws this great party, invites all of his military leaders, all the influential people, all the important people are there, and they're having a great time. And Herodias sends her daughter in to dance for Herod and all these people. And it's evidently quite an impressive dance. And everybody's pleased with it, and everybody's happy with it. And everybody thinks, wow, that was really great. And Herod is so impressed that he says, you can have anything up to half of my kingdom. And that sounds like a great offer, but consider for a moment what Herod actually had. He was no king. He was a puppet ruler. He was put in place by Rome to rule over this one particular area. So half of his kingdom wasn't all that much. But yet, that's what he says to this girl. You can have anything you want. And this girl was a very wise girl. And I hope all of you young ladies pay attention to this, because when this girl is offered this, anything you want, what does she do? She goes to her mother and says, Mom, what should I want? So take that to heart, girls. When you got to ask your mother, she has some wise advice. Well, maybe this wasn't such wise advice, because Herodias had basically one thing that she wanted: the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And Herod, even though he respected John the Baptist, even though he appreciated him, even though he knew he was righteous and a holy man, he had to comply with what he offered. So he has John the Baptist beheaded, and the head is carried in on a platter. Slightly different dancing, slightly different result of the story. So we've got these two stories. Obviously, they both involve dancing, but yet they have a different ending. And what else is interesting about this story is that in each story, everybody has the same reaction except one person. In the first story, the Israelites are all rejoicing, they're all partying, they're all celebrating, they're so happy that the ark is back, and David sends them all home with some food, and it's a great time, and everybody is totally enjoying this wonderful celebration, except for David's wife. You read a little farther in the story, and David's wife saw David dancing, and she despised him in her heart. And that's why my wife has never seen me dancing. I don't want to take the risk of her despising me in her heart. And she probably would if she saw me dancing. So everybody's happy except this one person. In the other story, I think only one person is happy. Probably Herodias. You know, if you want a buzzkill at your birthday party, have somebody carry in a head on a platter. That'll really ruin the mood at a birthday party. Just saying. Now, don't do that. Yeah, nobody was probably went away from that party feeling all that great, except Herodias. But there's one other major difference between these two stories. Yeah, they both involve dancing, but why were the people dancing? David was dancing to praise God. David was dancing because his God was a great God. His God had done marvelous things. Herodias sent her daughter out there to dance for her own personal gain, for what she wanted, what she thought she needed, what she thought would make her life great. So the question becomes, why do we dance? Are we dancing to praise God? Are we dancing to thank God for what He has done for us? Or are we dancing because we want something for ourselves? You know, I've read the Gospels many times, and I don't ever remember ever reading that Jesus danced. Has anybody ever come across that in there? That Jesus was dancing? So yeah, I mean, I can look at that and I can say, well, I can't dance. Jesus couldn't dance. I'm just like Jesus. But could Jesus dance? Did Jesus dance? Came across an interesting song. I've heard it in the past. Some of you might have heard it. Some of you it's probably new. And I have to express my appreciation to the worship team because I gave them this song and I said, I want you to sing this for us. They said, sure, okay. I think that's what they said. So later on, they're going to sing this song with us. You can sing along with them, but since the song Lord of the Dance is probably not that familiar to you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this song to begin with. It was written in 1963. And it's basically first person Jesus. In other words, Jesus is telling the story of his life, what he has gone through, and the times that he has danced. So, Lord of the Dance, when has Jesus danced? The song begins in the first verse by saying that he danced at creation. Imagine you're in a place with absolute nothing. There's nothing out there at all, and then God is creating the sun and the moon and the stars and everything that else is out there. And Jesus is so impressed with us that he goes out and dances among the moon and the stars and the sun. Sounds believable to me. Later on in that verse, he talks about Jesus dancing at his birth when he came to Bethlehem. Now, for the most of us, we've got an image in our mind of what that stable looked like that night. And we've seen pictures of this and whatever else, and all the animals are standing there contentedly looking at Jesus. And it's a beautiful, clean stable with not a speck of dirt anywhere. And what do you suppose would have happened? We have this baby laying in a manger, and all of a sudden this baby jumps up and starts dancing. I think Mary and Joseph would have definitely freaked out then. There had been enough stuff happening that they didn't know what was going on, but and Jesus got up and started dancing. And he might have. Who knows? He goes on in the second verse, talking about how he has invited other people to dance with him. He invites the scribes and the Pharisees, and they say no. But Jesus keeps on dancing. And he invites the fishermen, James and John, and they say, sure. And they go dance with Jesus, and everybody's dancing then. Jesus and all the disciples are dancing together. Then he talks about dancing on the Sabbath while he is healing the lame man. And I got to thinking about this. You know, the religious leaders were upset with Jesus healing on the Sabbath. How would they have felt if he was dancing while he was doing it? That would have really got him irritated. But Jesus says he danced when he healed people on the Sabbath. And the religious people got upset about it. And they whipped him and they beat him. And then he goes on in the next verse to talk about hanging on the cross. And there's one of the best lines in the song in this verse. I danced on a Friday, and the sky turned black. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. Think of Jesus on the cross, dying. The sins of everybody on his back. God can't even look at him because he has all these sins. And Jesus is dancing at that moment. After his resurrection. Again, we've seen plays, we've seen movies, we've seen dramas, we've seen Jesus coming out of the grave. It's not hard at all to think. When he came out, he was dancing. He had to have been dancing. And if you think David was dancing when they all come in, imagine how Jesus was dancing when he came out of the grave. And I hate to criticize the songwriter, but I really think he should have redone this last line of this song. Because in the last line, he says he wants to dance with us. The songwriter says, I'll live in you if you'll live in me. He should have said, I'll dance with you if you dance with me. Jesus invites us to dance with him. But there's one problem. I can't dance. I got no rhythm. I can't do it. Don't even want to try. And I know I'm not the only one here that feels like that, because I was talking to one person and she said, I can't dance either, so I'm not going to get anything out of this sermon. I said, well, just wait till you get to the end of it. maybe the word dance doesn't mean dance like we think of dancing. Think back to what all Jesus did, the Lord of the dance. All these times he said he danced. Maybe he wasn't dancing. Maybe he was praising God. Maybe he was serving God. Maybe he was doing what God wanted him to do. We can all do that. We can all dance with Jesus. No matter what. The good times and the bad times. When people accept us, when people reject us. When people join in with us, when people try to stop us. Our job is simply to dance. Jesus will lead us in the dance. We need to dance with Jesus. Please pray with me. Oh God, we come before you today as your humble servants. We come knowing that your Son, who came to show us how to live, also came to show us how to dance. Whatever that means for each of us, it might look different for each one of us. But yet, when we serve you, when we praise you, when we follow you, we make you our God, we are dancing with you. Help us, O God, to dance. And this I pray in your name.